Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to our first official Evening Weekend Lecture Series, and with David Becker. I'm sure a lot of you have gone to his restaurants. We have Sweet Basil in Needham and Juniper and Wellesley, and you have a new restaurant.
It's called Bolani.
Yeah. Becker hails from Newburyport, and he's honed his craft around the world. He's written 2 cookbooks, Thrown Out of the Italian Kitchen, Recipes from Sweet Basil.
We have a Juniper book coming out soon, too. Yeah.
A collection of soups, stews, and braises from Sweet Basil. Of note, he's also a potter at his restaurants, and he's made a lot of his plates. Yeah?
Not as much lately.
Oh, not as much lately. He also has a new daughter.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make sure that she was properly attired. David? I was looking for her.
Cute. Wow.
Sweet chef and wanted a melon.
Thank you. That's so cute.
So welcome, enjoy everybody. There's food here if you get hungry as he's talking about food. And afterwards we will have time to ask him questions. If you'd like to purchase a book, it has to be by check or cash.
I came ill prepared, but
we do too. So anyway, have fun and look forward to it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect with this, but hey, I'm assuming that I shouldn't assume anything, but if anyone's Sweet Basil, it's kind of like the garlicky big portion spot, and then Juniper was like our Middle Eastern answer to that. And then 2 weeks ago we opened up another spot in Wellesley, in Waltham, right across from Josh Smith's Moody's and Tempo, and there's a Charcoal Guido's is right there, and Amuletto, and we're right in that little pocket. And we called it Bolani, and there are a couple people who have been there already, and it's I did not really like beat the drum to try to get any publicity or even attention. I was thinking more just like open up softly and let it grow organically and see what kind of things go wrong, and and I'm not sure if that was the right way to go about it, but I guess it was the opposite of how Juniper opened, but I guess if anyone has any questions about how to make anything that we've ever made at the restaurant, I brought a couple of samples from one. I brought bread and pesto from Sweet Basil, and then I brought some pita chips and the carrot ginger fennel hummus from Juniper, and then the chickpea fries. I don't know if those are even out there, but those are with a little paprika aioli. That's from the new spot Bolani. So I've been like, and the name Bolani doesn't mean anything. It has no significance. It's based on a typo. Yeah. It was kind of fateful. Like I really, and it's like when people ask like, how did you come up with the name? It was the lawyer that I was using was, he'd been on the different boards, and he was of Waltham. And I don't know if any of you have ever dealt with the town of Wellesley or Needham, but it's like you have to get in on the docket, and if you're late, they push you back a month. And so you just have to kind of get in there early, and then to guarantee a spot. And so he called me up, and he's like, I'm leaving for the day at 4:30, but I will be having, I'm going to need, to submit your paperwork by noon tomorrow. And I was like, what? Like it's 12 past 4 now. And, and I had like the little numbers and the address and the different legal things that you needed, but I didn't have a name yet. And so at that point, I was thinking we'd do something similar to Juniper, do a Middle Eastern theme. And I looked up, and I don't know if this has happened to you. I just assume it happens to everybody, where it's like you, I don't know, you're on Wikipedia and you look up the most obscure racket sports, or like, there are a bunch of weird ones. Like even, the actual game, the original game of tennis is invented called rackets, and there are only 2 courts in the world. And there's one in England and there's one in Chicago, and you actually hit a dried lamb bladder or something like that's the ball, and that's like it's like before tennis and before badminton, and I'm just using like, or where was the island where the last woolly mammoth lived, or whatever it is. It's like I just get stuck in these little Wikipedia vortexes, and I went on one, and it was basically like Middle Eastern subgenres of music. And there was one that looked cool. It was called Baladi, and it was spelled Baladi, and it's a type of belly dancing. And I was like, that's cool. It sounds like it could be Italian. It sounds like it could be, And then, so I wrote it, I hand wrote it, I took a screenshot with my phone, and then I mailed it, or I emailed it to the lawyer to submit it. And but I didn't connect the bottom part of the D. So it looked like a lowercase n. And then I didn't know this until I saw the actual public announcement in the paper. And I had already done the artwork for the business cards and it's like I'd already contacted the sign people, and I was like, wait, it's gonna be. And but if you Google it, it means a couple of things. It means mother in Bengali, and it means magnet in Filipino. But I thought it was kind of it was apt. It's like the aptly named restaurant word. And so I think where we started to talk about how to pursue, it's like the different, it's like we came up with the color scheme before we came up with the menu type. And it was like, why don't we do like gray and hot pink and purple, and that'll be like our, and we'll get like some mercury glass and put it up there, and I'll take some acid and spray it on the mirrors to make them look old, and we'll get some kind of curtains that'll look there. And then it like slowly became like that was the identity of the place. So anything that I find around that's like hot pink or gray or like silver or metal, it goes there, and then I don't know, however weird that sounds, if you ever want to know how like a restaurant gets hatched, it's like, I'd say sometimes it's more controlled and more deliberate than that, and I'd say that might probably be the better way to approach it, But and then when we were thinking about the food, it was like, the head chef at Juniper's used to be the head chef at Sweet Basil, and then before that he worked at Blue Ginger, and I've worked with him off and on since we were teenagers growing up in Newburyport, and so it's like we have like a good, team effort. I'd say he's more methodical, and I'm more like, I think it drives him crazy how, hey, let's try it that way. If it doesn't work, then we'll go the other way. And he wants it to be like, so I think we like offset each other. It's like, I don't know. Sorry, I like babble, but it's like I'll get back to what I was talking about before, but it's like I compare the restaurant business to the band The Beatles, and it's like if you sit around and listen to like a lot of musicians, they are some of them are like far more talented than the Beatles were, but it was like I think what was so great about the Beatles is that it was like they were overflowing with talent, but then they were also balanced. So it was like if I compare the kitchen to the Beatles, it would be like the John Lennon is the angry artist who's like mad all the time, and he loves this cantaloupe so much he's mad again. Like he's just glasses on the tip of his nose. Like you'll see pictures in magazines, and they have sleeve tattoos, and they just look angry. Like they just love food so much they hate it. And they're just like, or like the violinist that's just furious. It's just that's the John Lennon. And if you have too many John Lennons in a kitchen, you'll have the most like sublime, ethereal meal you've ever had. You can't remember anything that it was. You're afraid to ask how to pronounce it. It's like, what is this? And it'll be some barnacle from, Portugal. Like they're. I'm like, I've had all these. I went to the James Beard House recently, and it was almost like all of the chefs that were cooking were like trying to out-weird each other, and literally the one of the chefs made a dessert with like kvass, which is like a fermented root vegetable yogurt. It's like kind of, and he basically forbid everybody to have coffee with their dessert. It was just like, what? They'd already ordered it. There shouldn't be coffee in the dining room. It'll mess with the sense of smell, and it'll ruin the dessert. It's like, stop. But it would be like, so if you have too many John Lennons in a kitchen, it'll be like, exorbitantly priced, and it'll be like really good, and the place will probably hemorrhage money. You know, it doesn't stand a chance of making money, but it'll be like, you know, 3 months to get in, but it'll be like, you know, dandelion root pesto and all sorts of weird stuff. And then Paul McCartney is the guy in the restaurant that gets there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and he's peeling the onions, and he's also a very good cook and good at his job, but he's less passionate. He's more pragmatic, and it's like you get a case of eggplant, or you get one individual eggplant, or you get 5 cases of eggplant. It's product, and and the two of those guys will not like each other. They might have mutual respect for each other's talent and their need, but the Paul McCartney will think that the John Lennon is lazy, because the John Lennon is taking 5 hours to make this like reduction of, you know, some sort of scorpion fish fumet that he's like, and it comes out in this little squeeze bottle, you know, and then you have the Paul McCartney, and that person's already made, you know, 5 gallons of some sort of stock, and you know all the onions are already gone, and you know he's just ready to go. So like I shouldn't even say he, because it applies to everybody, but it's like that person is like thinking that the John Lennon is lazy because they really don't produce, and then the John Lennon thinks that the Paul McCartney is stupid, and so the two of them make a good restaurant though. You know, and if you have you know, too many Paul McCartneys in a restaurant, then you have like it's like a chain that's good quality, but like he still is pumping out these, like, he's a troubadour. Like he's making just, a lot of his songs are formulaic, and they're good, they're catchy, but for 40 years he's been making these really good songs that are like, they're kind of the same. But then the most important Beatle is the George. And he is the only one that did cool stuff after the Beatles broke up. He went and like raised $1 billion for people starving in Bangladesh, while John and Paul were fighting with each other over who was, who hated each other the most, or who was the most useful. And it was like this, George was, but he was kind of like the firstborn child of a divorcing couple. Like he was the one who had a high emotional IQ and was telling each one of them what they needed to hear. I'm sure there was more to it than that. I'm not like an aficionado of the Beatles. But like if there's a George Harrison in the kitchen or in the restaurant, they're the ones that remember people's birthdays. They're the ones that, like, if someone's car breaks down, they pick them up. They like, you know what I mean? They're kind of checking in with people, and that's like a crucial glue for probably any business. I'd say this applies to lots of stuff, but so like, and I don't even, and you can be multiple. Like you don't have to commit. But then the Ringo is kind of the one who's lucky to be there. And not to say and that's like, but if they'd had another superstar Beatle, it would have been like, it would have ruined it. You know what I mean? Ringo's songs were great, and they kept it from being too heady. Like, so, you know what I mean? Like Octopus's Garden and Yellow Submarine, they're just kind of goofy songs, but they fit on the album, and they just keep it from being too, like, almost like too good. It's approachable. And so like if you have the Ringo is the guy who's always late, and he's always like on the verge of getting fired, and if you have a good manager like that, the Ringo is the lightning rod that keeps everybody else safe from being fired. So the manager is always on them, like, where's Ringo? Oh, I'm gonna kill them, stomping and storming around. And then meanwhile, the other people that are probably doing a lackluster performance are safe because Ringo's there to, like, And if you have too many Ringos, you have a dive bar. So it's like if you have too many Georges, you might end up with a coffee shop, there's nothing wrong with any of that, but it's like So if you have like the John who's coming up with like crazy concoctions that are a little like pushing the edge a little bit, not everybody likes it, but it's like when it comes to wine, it's like orange wine, where it's like this oxidized white wines that they used to make like 300 years ago, and they're like not very good, but they're like thought-provoking, I don't know. And then so like getting back to that, Tim Fichera is the John. And I don't know what that makes me, but he's like, I feel like I'll take some of his weird food and make it more approachable, and he'll be angry at me most of the time, but I'll just be like, look, it's like, this is, I feel like the business model is like, find out what people want, give it to them, make it better than what they're expecting, and then a little cheaper, and you're good. And it's not that easy. I mean, it's not like you wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to make a bunch of bad food. I don't think, it's like everybody thinks they're going to make good food. Just try to get it. But like if you guys have any questions along the way, let me know. Yeah, hey?
So when you have in your head that you need all of these different personalities, do you hire that way?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of like, happenstance. Like, so I've been fortunate enough to, have people walk in the door just as someone walked out, and it's like you're like, this is perfect. Like, where were you? This is great. And so it's not like, but if I know I'm looking for like a certain personality, then you don't want too many of these other ones there, and you can see that there's like. If you have like too many really opinionated artists, chefs in one kitchen, they're gonna fight, and then if you have not enough, then it's like the food will start to get not as good and not as intricate, and then if you don't have enough like people with an emotional IQ, then you that don't care for each other, then you just end up with an unpleasant environment, and so like. And I'm going to say every single person that works for me has a moment, aside from Annie, has a moment of being the Ringo, including myself. I mean, I think a lot of it is like, one of the main reasons why I am my own boss is because I'm chronically tardy, and chronically tardy, and I'll make like errors that would get a boss really mad, and it's like, but I try to not be a hypocrite. So like I think with my own staff, I don't ever like needle them about being on time. If it seems like comes from a place of like bitterness and disrespect, I'll address it. But if it's just, because I think a lot of the time with my own punctuality, it's a matter of optimism and flakiness, and so it's like when I'm, however long it took me to do something in the best case scenario, that's like how long I think it will take. I know it. Sorry, go. Oh, yeah.
How did you happen to get into this business, and how did you learn what you needed to learn to run a restaurant?
I'll answer the second one first. Is like I'm still learning. You know what I mean? There's still I encounter a problem that I've never seen once a week, and I'll just be like, it'll be a head scratcher, and you're just you treat it like it's a puzzle, and and I say when all else fails, just be nice. Like don't, and then if that fails, be mean. It's like, but I'm not saying like I didn't say that's like my go-to, but just be like, say please and thank you, and try to pay your bills on time, and then you know what I mean. Like, but I think if the learning experience is like constant, and I'd say like, and also food fashion changes, and it's like certain, music trends, that the music that I was playing in the early 2000s at Sweet Basil just isn't cool anymore. And it's like you have to adapt, but then you don't want to offend the people. So like, I use that as the example, but like there are certain dishes that were really cool in the 90s, and they're just not anymore. And so you don't want to alienate people that like those, but you have to adapt, and then you can't stick to being like, however you were as a chef in your like formative years, you have to be careful not to stay there, because it's like art and it has to be evolving. It can't stay the same. And I actually do apply that to music too. And I heard myself saying this in the basement at Sweet Basil, and they're blaring the music, and it was like, just hip hop from, now. And I'm like, what is this crap? And I heard, and I'm like, I'm like, why can't they play any old school hip hop? Which like my own dad would hate. And I'm like, and then it kind of dawned on me. I'm like, I just have to be open to everything. And then also it'd be like for every decade that goes by, most of the music that comes out is terrible. Even in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, like most of it was bad. It's like we remember it fondly because the stuff that came out in the Shake is like timeless. And as we speak, there's good music coming out, but most of it is crap. And then in 15 years, the stuff that is still remembered now is going to be like, probably revered for a good long time. But that being said, like when molecular gastronomy was all the rage, and I don't know if you remember this, but it was like there were foams and froths and sous vide, and like there were chefs and cooks that were coming up the chain then, and they were that was their heyday, and they're still kind of clinging on to it. And what I'm realizing is it's dated now, and it looks like you can borrow from it, but you don't want to get stuck in where you were when you decided that you were good. You know what I mean? When you actually had the self-awareness of like, I love this, and I'm actually good, and I'm going to stay doing this forever. And it would be like, no, you can adapt and mix it up. And and how I got started, it was luck more than anything, and I really think it was luck. And whenever I see kind of hyperactive teenagers now, I'm like, you are in the right business, and like if anyone tells you that you're stupid, don't believe them. It's like you can probably read more than I was like, I haven't been in a library in a really long time, like and not because I'm not illiterate. I mean, it's like sort of, but it's like I try to like get through the New Yorker, but the articles, if they're more than 4 pages, it's like shit. And I like their food commentary, like the food articles. The food reviews in the New Yorker, I can actually see they're short, and they'll be like, what's kind of cool these days? They'll have some little dish that's like, or some criticism, or even a musical recommendation, and I'll just be like, hey there, and but so like I've never gotten along with librarians. It's like I don't know how to whisper. Just bringing my books back all late. Hey.
Can you give us 3 adjectives to describe your clients, customers?
I don't know. I'd say fun-loving. I don't know. I guess.
I get this from an article in the Boston Globe every Wednesday. They do an interview with the chef, and they ask them they ask them all the same questions, and that one repeats. And I'd love to hear what the chefs, the owners, how they describe their clients. Usually they say they're discerning, loyal.
Yeah, no, loyal's good. I don't know about discerning. I'm not saying that they're not. I wouldn't. It's like, because that says more about me than it does them. Like, it's like they appreciate good stuff. It's like,
I wonder if you attract the same type of client, customer.
No. I mean, I think I probably should think about that more than I do. I think I spend more time trying to offend as few people as possible without, like, if you get, like, so deluded by trying to not offend people. So it's like, or like have as few people, including my staff, angry at me and my neighbors. Like, I just want to have everybody, like, and just... whether it's fighting over parking spaces in the back with, like, at Sweet Basil, there are 5 parking spaces and there's 7 tenants, and they're always fighting. It's really funny. They're not adults.
So last night I went to dinner, and one of my friends asked me to ask you, why did you change the sauce on the rosemary chicken?
I didn't realize we did. It was not a deliberate...
He said it was very creamy. I never had that.
Yeah.
I always go to a couple of other items, but he said it was very creamy, and this time it was a thicker sauce.
I'm going to say that was probably maybe a combination of poetic license and an accident. And I'd say, like, or just, there's a margin of error, and I try to let, as long as the person cooking it, I'll come back to your question. I think I have to take some time with that. But so, like, how the training works at Sweet Basil, and if it goes as planned, the people working on the periphery are less talented, or at least less experienced. And so on one side there's salads, and on the other side there's the pasta. And the guy boiling the pasta, he basically keeps track of the, I'm thinking of one person now, and he's really talented, and so I think he's going to move right into the middle. There's actually no grill, and it's all saute, and it's kind of like I think of it as like pure cooking. It's just like it's like a pan, good olive oil, and your ingredients, and there's you can have all the tricks you want, but it's like saute is kind of like, lead guitar, or like if you're I don't know, I don't know, there's like a subtle art to it with even the rosemary chicken. Like when I make it, I try to make it so it has a peanut butter smell to it, and I haven't actually even been able to figure out how to duplicate it every time. And anyone who's eaten the rosemary chicken, sometimes it has a peanut butter flavor to it, and people have actually asked, does it have peanut butter in it? And it's what you do is you almost burn every step of the way. So like when you sear the chicken, you almost burn it, and then when you reduce the white wine, you like deglaze the pan and you get all the bits off of the somewhat burnt chicken, and then you reduce the wine down until it's like this dark brown syrup, and then you add the cream to it and the chicken stock, and then you reduce that down until it's almost like, and then you add the cheese and you toss it with the pasta and you add a little pasta water. But it's every step of the way was like to the point of almost failure, and you just like get it, and then it has that peanut butteriness. But sometimes you just don't have the time, and you don't have the stove space, and you're kind of moving things around, and you're keeping track of the steak temperatures, and you don't want the shrimp to overcook on that dish, so you move that, and you're kind of doing your thing. But that is not a deliberate thing. And I'd say if anybody ever has a complaint or a suggestion, like, don't be shy. You can even email me, and I'll get to the bottom of it and figure out who was working that night and see if they just need like a tutorial. But usually the people that are working on the peripheral, the salads and the pasta, they have less involvement in the final product. And then in the middle is what we call, and then those two are the communicators. So they're communicating with the wait staff and each other. So it's almost like those two are like, how are we looking on that table? How is that table looking? And then those two are like communicators, and they're like usually really organized. And then once they've proven that they can handle that and organize multiple things, then you have the person in the middle that sautés on either side, and then they don't really talk to anybody. They're just kind of focused in on what they're doing. And so like there's some people that are better at it than others, and then also they have bad days, so it's like, it's not, I hope it's not like the sign of a new trend at Sweet Basil where all of a sudden it's like, hey, let me get you back. I'll come.
What is your favorite dish, and what is the new kale?
The new kale.
This is the time of the oatmeal.
I don't know. It's like, I haven't gotten over kale yet. I love it. I love dinosaur kale is my favorite. Do you guys know what I'm talking about with dinosaur? You've seen it. And they call it dinosaur kale, and I think they probably, it's not weird. They sell it at a lot of different places, but it's like, it's kind of the knobby cup kale. And you can eat that as a salad, and it catches the dressing, and you can saute it, and you can, you know what I mean? You can eat it raw, or, I don't know. I'm going to say maybe dandelion greens or collard greens, because they're turnip greens, turnip tops. Like, these are all edible, and they're all kind of bitter. And I think like bitter is kind of like spicy food. So as soon as you get used to one, you start eating bitter food, and then almost like a little bit of bitter isn't enough anymore, however weird that is. So it's like the first time you eat arugula out of your garden, and you're just like, and then you keep growing arugula, it comes back, and then you eat it, and all of a sudden it's in your salad all the time, and you're just into it. And then the next summer, it's like, you have dandelions mixed in, and it's like, I'm just making this up, but I do think it's like, because I think when kale was first being, salads of kale, everyone's just like, what? And you're chewing on it, just like, and now it's everywhere, you know what I mean? Like raw Brussels sprouts are kind of normal now, like shaved Brussels sprout salads, and they're great. And I'm like, I remember when I was a kid eating these boiled, they're kind of just breathy tasting, and now it's like, and then I think when I was probably about 23 years old, it was like the first time I roasted Brussels sprouts, and I was just like, you know, I'm like, why? Who has been holding out on me this whole time? So, hey, yeah, sure.
It's the first part.
Oh, what's that?
What is your favorite?
Oh, so lately it's been the chicken parm at Sweet Basil, and yeah, I love it. And yeah, I actually had one before. I was trying to organize, the food. I had to make like a bunch of different stops to collect all this stuff to bring it here, and I realized that I was like peckish. I was just like, I couldn't figure out like whether to like bring it to my car or like, and I'm like, can you just make me a chicken parm? And I just like, and it's like a pizza without a crust, you know. And I don't know, maybe it's just like I've kind of gone back and forth from being like, you know, if I had to pick one, that would be my favorite. But you know, I usually like a bowl of soup and a salad at the same time, and you just kind of have the cold crunch and then a hot bowl, you know. But yeah, if I had to pick one, or like maybe I'm just getting basic, like just going back to the basics, because I love like straight up spaghetti with oil and garlic, fresh cracked pepper, cheese, just a little bit of cheese, but really good olive oil, salt, pepper, just like, you know, cacio de pepe is kind of what they'd call it, and so it'd be like a chicken parm, cacio de pepe, and there you have it, you know.
Could you talk about the birthing of Sweet Basil and why Italian, why Needham, and when did you know you were ready for Juniper?
Okay, so I took Sweet Basil over from the guy that used to own Fava. And I was working up in Newburyport, and I was like not happy, and Paul Boris was his name, and he started Fava, and then I think that Sweet Basil was just like too small for him, and also he was getting married and wanted to take a month-long honeymoon, and so he needed someone to run it. And I was 24 years old. I mean, I was just like naive, and I didn't even know you had to pay taxes. It was just like, I mean, I knew you had to pay them. I just didn't know. Yeah, I thought that they sent you a bill, and I mean, eventually they do. It's like they do, and you pay. But I mean, luckily it never came to that. I was like that. But I remember, you know, I didn't know. I just it was I was a good cook, but I didn't. I just. But so and literally tying the conversation together, I was working at this place, and I was killing myself, and I'd never even owned a car. I lived in Newburyport. It was all walking distance from where I lived. Go visit my parents, go there, you know, and walk to work. And but I would work, you know, I don't even know how many hours it was. It's like I really did my best to not try to figure it out, because I was on salary, and it would be like try to not think about how much I was actually earning per hour. But I had split days off, which is like, I learned this lesson from him, is that however your employees, it would be like, no, just do your best. Even if they want to overwork themselves, don't let them overwork, and give them 2 days off in a row. Which is like, in the restaurant business, there's this level of like machismo of like, by me saying this, there are people that wouldn't want to work for me because I'm not hardcore enough for them. Like, they want to be like, you know, like, I want to just be like drilled, and you know, but you can't do it. It's not. And I look at it like, I've chosen this to make this my life, and so like, it's not a sprint, you know, and you have to like set up, you have to protect your health, and you know, you have to get into footwear, and you know, like all, and worry about mats on the floor, and just the safety of stuff. But when you're, you know, in your early 20s, and you really want to just like prove that you can hang. I mean, you want to work 16-hour days, and if there's someone working 17, you want to do that too. And I'm just like, this is for the birds, and it also doesn't make your food better. But when I was working up in Newburyport, like, I would be, you know, required to be there at, you know, sometimes 10 in the morning, and I might not leave till midnight. And but if he expected me there at 10 in the morning, and me being me, I'd get there at 10:15, and I was still there at 12:30 at night, he would still be mad at me because I was 15 minutes late. So like, sooner or later, he was just mad at me all the time. And so it was kind of like a natural. I think he was like that though. He really has a high expectations, but like, you know, really, there a lot of people that worked for him have like just either left the industry altogether just because they're like, I remember like walking home at the end of the night and just being like, I thought I was a good cook. I thought I was all right. You know, I mean, like, I guess maybe I should just rethink that. And then, so when I started thinking about maybe taking over the restaurant, I mean, like Sweet Basil at the time I took it over was under $1,000 a month rent, and yeah, it's crazy. But it was awesome. It was like really, I wouldn't have been able to do it had it not been. And Paul there wasn't heat in the whole building. It wasn't like. You just run the dish machine, it would get the whole thing fogged up, and that was like, it was so small. I mean, it was 500 square feet, and yeah, I mean, there was no back door, so when Captain Martin's would come through with their box of fish, they'd like dribble it all over, like, you'd be like, you know, and I had to take the trash out every single day because I didn't want anybody to I didn't want my staff to have to wait till the customers left, but I knew that I had to wait, so I'd stay. And then I have to almost do this as a mime because it would be like you'd have to go out the front door of Sweet Basil and you go loop around where the UPS store is, RFK Kitchen was, around the back where the new condominium, and then all the way to the back parking lot behind the old movie theater, and there was a dumpster there. And I would make this calculation every night whether I should do it in one trip or two. And I would try to save, because it would save me 10 minutes or whatever, and I'd already been there 12 hours, it didn't matter. So I used to like tie 4 trash bags together, and then I would try to like walk as fast as I could. And like, you know, and I might even be like meeting people out later, and it, like inevitably I would have changed my clothes so I wouldn't have to go back in and change, and I would spill stuff all over my shoes and just be like, you know, and I would have deserved it because I should have done 2 trips, and I should have done it. Hey.
How is having a family changing your role in the restaurant?
Unfortunately, it just made me tired and forgetful. It's like, I think, you know, but I think right now it's like, you know, I don't think I'm a bad delegator. I think I try to surround myself with people that, you know, their skills complement my weaknesses, hopefully, and you know, and I can lean on them. But I'd say like now I just want to move slower so I don't lock my keys in the car. You know, that'll just or whatever it is, like, or if I like leave the house and I don't have a binky, that will ruin my day. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? So it's like in my chest pocket. I don't have one now, but it would be like it's like what I do. It's like wallet, keys, phone, glasses, wherever they are. I don't know where they are until I binky. And then, you know, and if you know what I mean? Like, I'd say if anything, I'm still trying to find that balance. And I think opening a new restaurant at the same time as having a baby is probably comically bad timing. But I mean, it's also like, I think right around the time, you know, it's right around the time starting to open the restaurant, there was a documentary, I think it was on CNN or PBS about JFK. And I was like, he was having kids and he was running for president. I'm like, I mean, granted, he's a Kennedy, so it's different. But, you know, it's like, but I was looking at it, and like, it's, you know, and then on top of that, it would be like a lot of my staff have been working for me for years at this point, like years and years, and they're all raising families, and they want more, and they want to know that they're behind, that I'm making moves, and if I go and use, you know, starting a family as my excuse to not grow, and they're wanting their new family to be the excuse as to why they're growing, and it would be like, there has to be a compromise somewhere. You know what I mean? Like if they're all of a sudden being, like when they started and they were in their mid-20s and now in their mid-30s and they want to have more responsibility and they want more money and they want more benefits and like the whole thing. It just has to, it's, you know, I'm on kind of like a weird treadmill where it's like I can't be the one to stop it. You know, it might slow itself down just with like, you know, overextension and bad food. You know, it's like once the rosemary chicken starts going, that's like, I need to hear about this stuff. You know what I mean? I mean, that's like inevitably, usually that's how it goes. It's like you kind of keep growing until you have to shrink again. But I don't see myself as there yet. But then again, maybe I won't know when I'm there, you know. Hey.
You told us a little about the team that you have in the kitchen. I wonder, is there a team that is on the business end, or is that all you? So
the managers that I have, they are usually, you know, they do a lot of the administrative stuff, and some of them are better at it than others, and there are other people that are like more creative than others, and so like there's some that are like obsessed with Excel spreadsheets, and I'm like, and I just want to be like, I totally need this, but I think you need to get a soul. I'll say that stuff to them. It's like, but you know, because they're just like, if we can shave 2 points off of this, we'll be in a good place. It's like that, and but then it's you know, it's a lot of it is, you know, creating the vibe and knowing what to tighten and knowing what to loosen, and you know, it's like I think sometimes you think that you're just trying to always tighten things up, but sometimes things are too tight and you have to loosen them. You know, it's like, and so if I can get the management to be that way, and so like if I look at Sweet Basil, you know, there are a couple people that help out with the business, and then I have a bookkeeper that checks it out, and then at Juniper, it's a little different. You know, it's like but I'd say if you know, I think that is really important to have that stuff in place, because like without a business, you don't have, like, without the business end of it, you don't have a business. And if you're missing some of the fine print, which you know, it obviously happens. So if you have like, you know, people have personal things that happen and they have to go, you know, it's like, so I don't know if that answers your question, but I try to have the management help me with that, and I actually, I don't know. I wouldn't say that's like my strong suit, but it's not. I'm not as weak at it as you might think.
And are you selling all the stuff in the kitchen, in the cooking, and in the business and everything?
I mean, I guess so. I mean, I'd say like nowadays, thanks to the internet, I mean, you can learn a lot just in 15 minutes. It would be like, how do you approach stuff? But I never went to school. You know, it's not like I barely graduated high school, but like when I was in high school, it like never occurred to me to visit a college. It never occurred to me to like apply to one. It just didn't seem like, you know, I think both of my parents were like upset, but it's not like they did anything to facilitate it either. So it wasn't like, you know, and I had friends whose parents were like, Dave, what are you going to do with yourself? And I was just like, you know, it was kind of like a level of, you know, combination of like complacency. Like I started working when I was 11 at a place called Joseph's Winter Street Cafe, and it was, you know, I got paid $3 an hour cash, and I was one of about 5 kids that were working there, and it was basically like a reverse peer pressure on our parents. So like my friend John got the job, and then this other kid Jason started working there, and then I think that the dads, when they'd get together, they'd bump into each other at Lawton Kelly's on the Newbury-Newburyport line, like it's a hardware store, and talk about stuff, and you know, somebody said to my father, like, it's pretty great, like they're not bugging you for money, you always know where they are, you know, and if they're causing trouble, it's contained, you know what I mean? They're being supervised, which was not the case. You know, but when I joke about it, it was like I was allowed to drink as much soda as I wanted for free, and it was like I could have just been paid in soda. I loved it. I was like, you know, and I think if anything, it was kind of like a self-esteem booster. Like I wasn't a good student, and I was hyperactive and talked a lot, and I think I was kind of like boilerplate, you know, ADHD kid, and then all of a sudden you're in this place where if you show up every day, you're the best employee they've ever had. You know, all you have to do is be there, and they're psyched, you know, and so like you're there and you're drinking soda, and it was like, it was so perfect, and
What did you do at age 11 for a restaurant?
I was a dishwasher, and it was cool. I mean, it's, you know, I think, yeah, it was, you know, I'd say like if anything, I don't have any regrets. I mean, it kind of immediately taught me like the value of money, and it was also like self-sufficiency. Like I didn't really want my parents to help me with anything going forward. Like I didn't, you know, and I'm not saying I don't ask my dad for help still, you know, just for like advice on things, and you know, and he'll mostly answer the phone ranting about Donald Trump, but that's, you know, or the Red Sox, but this year he wasn't. He was very happy with that. But so he, you know, and I think, yeah, it's like you're immediately like, you just kind of have this, and I think one of the major things too is that it was like there was no like delineation between like ages. So if you're working with people that are in like different levels of adulthood, and you know, some of them are you know, it's just moonlighting, but they're English teachers in a high school, or they're you know, or they're on the verge of being homeless, or whatever it is, and you can't. You know, I think I weighed 80 pounds at the time. It was like, you can't pick up a pot, so you have to go over and ask an adult, like, hey, can you grab that for me? And they do, you know, and then you know, and you're allowed to eat food when you know, it's like, when you, I don't know, it's weird. It would be like, but then the next day you go to school, and the teachers are just like, one more peep out of you, and you're like, sorry, that's it, go to the office. You know, and I just remember that, and it would be like, and then you're kind of like detention, and then you walk from school to the job, and everyone's like, hey Dave, high five, good to see you, how's it going, what can I get for you, you want a soda? It's like, yeah, you know, and then you go about it, and then before you know it, like the salad, it's like you know, it was kind of a war of attrition, you know, it's like the salad guy does something to mess up, he gets fired. And then before you know it, you're the salad person making salads. And then, you know, and that's kind of how it was until I was the chef. It's like, you know, and it was basically the, you know, happenstance. The first night I actually learned how to cook on the line. And I'd say but when I was about 16, you know, there was these same kids that I grew up with, a lot of them are still in the restaurant business. And one of them, you know, I look at like Dave Becker, and he's, you know, I mean, not to say this means anything, but a few years ago he was voted by like GQ as the sexiest chef in America. I was like, but he was one of the dishwashers I was working with when we were kids. Like, stop it, you know. And now, but he was the you know, the chef de cuisine for Barbara Lynch's restaurants for a while. And anytime I'd go in there and hang out with him, just say hi, there'd always be some people from Newburyport in there. And it was kind of like, you know, by the time you graduate high school, you already know how to break down a leg of veal, and you know how to make pate, and you know how to shuck oysters, and it's like, yeah. So like you're already by the time these other people are graduating from culinary school, you know, they come out and you might already be their boss. You know, it's not like that was the end plan. It was mostly out of default. You know, and I think of there was one time where, you know, I think the first time I, you know, cooked on the line, I'd already been like watching the other cooks cook and being like, let me get in there and try it out. And I'd have to like do my other role twice as fast so that I could have the free time to come over and learn how to cook. And then that person got arrested doing something stupid. And then the next thing you know, it was like, there was nobody there else to cook. And then I did it, and it was like nothing got sent back. And I remember going home that night, and it was, you know, a school night, and I think I almost like kicked my parents' door in, and I couldn't contain myself with how excited I was. And you know, I think I was a sophomore in high school, and this was, I don't know if anyone ever goes up to Newburyport, but that was the restaurant was called Scandia, and that was right on State Street, and that place was great. But I'm going to say for a 10-year period, most of the people that were running it was like, you know, Lord of the Flies, you know, and it was just. You know, it was like that. You know, there'd be people in the dining room that would want to buy the chef a drink, and it would be like, you know, it'd just be a goof because the waitress would come back with a ginger ale. It's like, you know, and it's, but yeah, I mean, it's great. That in itself was kind of nuts. You know.
Do you use recipes?
Not usually. I mean, I'll read them, and I'm like a hoarder when it comes to cookbooks. Like, I love cookbooks, and I feel guilty even throwing out cooking magazines, but I realize I have to draw the line somewhere. So it's like all the old gourmet, I kind of let those. And food and wine, I'm not a big fan of, because it seems kind of, it's almost like paparazzi of the food, of like food magazines. Like, I love Bon Appetit, and I love Cooks Illustrated. You know, Cooks Illustrated's great, and you know, and they'll even analyze stuff down to the best canned green beans, and you know, it's like, or the best like vegetable peelers and stuff. You know, I always love that, where they do like a study of it, where they're looking at it. But yeah.
Do you like any of the TV chefs?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like Alton Brown, I think, is pretty great. Like, he, you know, he's it's like he comes up with like really good like kind of like hacks as you'd call it, but like, you know, if you've ever scrambling eggs, you're scrambling eggs and you get like the water starts to come out of it and they get kind of runny and hard at the same time. I bet everyone's been there, and it's like his tip, and I didn't see this on TV, someone told me about it, but I feel like he needs all the credit, was add a spoonful of mayonnaise before you whisk the eggs, and what'll happen is it'll bind it instead of it being so they'll stay fluffier longer. There's like a larger margin of error. But you know, I love Kitchen Nightmares and Bar Rescue. I like those shows. Like, they stress me out a little bit because like if it seems like a little too close to home, I'll be like, you know. But keep in mind, like whenever, so like I've seen this happen a couple of times in like Kitchen Nightmares and Bar Rescue, is that they'll go and if they go into a restaurant that is like actually pretty clean, they'll go and pull out the fry-later, and like every fry-later is grosser than it should be, just because it's, you know, it's kind of putting off grease. But I've seen a couple where I'm like, our fry-later is grosser than that, and they're like, you know, and what they want to do is they just want to like ratchet up the drama, and so they pull out the fry-later and they'll be like, this is absolutely unacceptable, shut it down. You know, and I think I saw one, it was Bar Rescue, and it was the chicken bone in Framingham when it was like, and yeah, no, I mean, but I was thinking some of the stuff that he did was like stupid for sure, like soaking the chicken for like a week. I'm like, he didn't need to do that. And then also, so I've actually worked with some people that also work there, and he was crazy proprietary with his barbecue sauce. And he lived an hour away, and so he would go home and mix it in his garage. That was like what he'd do, and then he'd come back, but he didn't want anyone to know how he did it. And so if they ran out of sauce, like this would actually happen. He would drive to his house an hour away and then come back an hour later. And so like, this is even before the show came out. There was a guy that worked for me, and he's like, he'd act like it was the recipe for Coca-Cola. Like, you know, it's like there are two people that have half of a recipe, so like nobody's at the same place. And he would drive home, and then they actually used that line on Bar Rescue, like, what is this, the recipe for Coke? And anyway, so yeah, the TV shows, I think, you know, I think Chef's Table's great. I do know it's like a lot of it is, you know, a little bit like, I think over the years I've like lost patience with the arrogance of chefs in general, where it's like, you know, I don't know, it's like it's like try to like make it seem like their lives are harder so that they can justify charging more, and then at the same time, I don't know, the way I could describe it is like, I've never like played the guitar, but like you see people that like, they've probably played the same song, you know, I don't know, 1,000 times, they've nailed it. But then when they're on stage, it's like they have their guitar face, and it's just like, ooh, oh, like it hurts. Like, and chefs do that. They're always just like, when they're like, and there was one Chef's Table, and if you watch it, it's like the guy from Brazil, and you never see him cut anything, and you never see him cook anything, but he has this pose of sharpening his knife, and so like every 10 minutes or so throughout the show, he's just like walking up and he's doing this dramatic flourish of like, and then he doesn't cut anything, and then they cut, and then the next thing you know, he's in the market like picking up fish or whatever, and then it shows him like, and you just know that it's probably, and whatever. I mean, the theater is important for sure. You know, it's like, you know.
It's very interesting that you say that. My friend's daughter is one of the food prep people that work for the Food Network. And you see a chef like Ina Garten, she's got all these beautifully chopped, she never cuts anything.
Yeah, oh yeah, she probably just shows up.
She does a little bit, but everything is done for them. And that little half-hour show takes about 8 or 9 hours to film.
Oh, I bet.
She's only in the room for a very brief period. All the other people are doing all the prep work.
Yeah.
Sort of like your restaurant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are people that, you know, it's like, it's kind of it's going a lot of the time, and I haven't been in the kitchen that much either, and so I think when people are giving me credit, it's like, don't give me too much credit, you know. It's like, But I also try to not take all the credit either. I mean, I try to defer as much of it to the rightful people, you know. But yeah, I think the theater of it for sure. You know, it's like if you know, I think everybody in the room knows Ming Tsai, but I have a feeling it's not like he's like cutting all that stuff for his show. I mean, there's a whole team of people, in there. And I don't know why I'm even telling you guys this, but so I went to one of the shows. You know, I've been to a couple of them, the filming, and they would take place out in Milford at the Clark Center. That's where they would film all the shows. And, you know, and there's like probably a staff of like 10 to 12 like film people, sound, and, you know, and they're kind of everywhere, and they're in the office, and they're analyzing how things are looking. But then for the most part, they're sitting around board, you know, making sure that all the levels are right. But then they're talking about, you know, the inner politics of where else they work, and a lot of them do work for probably Ina Gardner, and probably, you know, but one of them, a few of them worked for Martha Stewart, and there was one guy that his office was right next to the security booth where all the cameras were, and they were like, we know why she loves you. And I guess like she would be sometimes a dragon, and then other times like a cupcake, you know, and you never knew. But he would go every morning, he'd go in, get his coffee, and he'd go hang out in the security booth, and he'd wait for her to come out of her office door and he'd see what kind of mood she was in. And then if she was in a good mood, he would walk down the hall and be like, hey, Martha, how's it going? Good to see you. You know, and if she was in a bad mood, he would just go back into his office. So basically for like, you know, 3 years, she never saw him when she wasn't in a good mood. And so like, she loved him. Like he was like, they just had like this bond that he was never the face that she saw when she was upset. It's like brilliant, you know. And I'm just sitting there like, you know, and I just had no idea like what went on behind the scenes on like a, you know, a cooking TV show. But then they're all just sitting there like blah blah blah, you know, eating, you know, chips and talking about, you know, office politics and stuff, which is cool. But I don't know.
All right, I think anybody have any more otherwise? Last question, your best and worst meal outside of your restaurant?
Best meal lately is probably Little Donkey in Central Square. It's cool. I like it. It was like loud and lively, but like not offensively loud. It just felt like, you know, it's kind of had really good energy, and then the food was all really good and well made. Yeah, no, I'd say yeah, like Sarma and Somerville and La Brasa right in that same area. Those right there is really good. For Italian, I love Julia in Cambridge. It's right on Mass Ave, and they take reservations, and if you call them to make a reservation, they are literally booked up like 3 months in advance. It's like but I have never like not been able to get in. So it'd be like, you pull up, you go put your name in, and then you go next door to Temple Bar and you have a glass of wine. And usually like 1.5 glasses of wine in, there's a cancellation. They call you up and you just go right back. And it's like, I haven't gone on a Friday or a Saturday, but it's like if I go there on a Wednesday, they'll be like, I'm sorry, we're totally full. And it's like, all right, my name's Dave, will you call me if there are any cancellations or any room at the bar? And they have like really squishy seats at the bar, so it's not like a consolation to sit at the bar. It's like, it's good. But I feel like their food's like really honest and well made and not overpriced. You know, I think that's part of it too. It's like, you know, I'd say like,
You can't get in there like just being you.
they don't care. I even know the general manager. He doesn't, I'm not like I'd have like, hey. Here's my card. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other places. I mean, it's like, you know, believe it or not, like I love going out to dinner. I haven't as much because I've just been busy with the new restaurant and the baby, and but I'd say like if I try to keep track of like, you know, I'll pick a neighborhood, and then like, you know, JP has a lot of really fun, good restaurants, and it'll be like parking's a hassle, and so what I'll do is if I can't decide where I want to eat, you base it on where you could find a parking spot. And it's like, kind of helps out with like the decision-making process. And, you know, I think, you know, I haven't been to Buttercup yet in Natick, but the farmhouse people I'm a fan of, and I think that I've heard it's great, and so it's, you know, right there. And I haven't been to Capella in Needham yet, but I made friends with the GM kind of early on. We started talking restaurant stuff, and he seems like a good guy, and you know, and I have a feeling it'll do really well. The James, I forgot about them. I was talking about them earlier, where Fava used to be by the railroad tracks in Needham. It's like an Irish pub, but they're like with a conscientious chefly take on Irish pub food. So you can get like a Scotch egg. You know, it's like an egg, a soft-boiled egg wrapped in sausage, and then you deep fry it. But it's like really good. It's like it's, you know, and they do like steamed mussels that are outrageously good, and you know, and if I forgot any,
Those aren't so bad either.
yeah, no, I've. As far as pizza goes, I think Max and Leo's in Newton is my favorite lately. I like Otto and Brookline, but Max and Leo's is great.
Right in Newton Center on Century Street.
I don't.
No, Max and Leo's on Washington Street.
It's like on the Watertown Newton
No,
line.
Max and Leo Newton Center.
Is that the same? Okay.
Yeah.
I
There's
didn't
one
know
there,
Max
too.
and Leo's in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good though, right? I mean, it's like high heat, burnt, bubbly crust. It's good, you know.
About 3 tables.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've never eaten there. It's like you just kind of, yeah, yeah. But
Any meals you hated without naming a restaurant? This is also from the Globe. When they do the Wednesday chef, they always ask the worst and the best meal.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'd say like, I think I'm like offended usually by like, you know, pretense, but so like that would trump like bad food. So like if the food was okay, but they were just, you know, full of pomposity, I'd be like, you know, just makes it taste worse for some reason. But yeah, I can't think of like the worst meal.
Any other questions? And does everyone have a raffle ticket? If you don't, Ashley, who is our amazing program person at the COA, say hi to Ashley.
Hi, Ashley.
Okay, go ahead, unwrap.
Yeah, do you take reservations at the new place?
I am. We're taking reservations at the new place, but I wanted to point this out, and it's like I feel like it comes up a lot. Is like the lack of reservations is not being difficult for the sake of like. It's almost like the way I would describe it. So like if I'm working the door at Sweet Basil, and people come in and ask me how long it'll be, and I give them as like honest a time as possible, and I'm wrong. Say like hey Annie. I'm like wrong with the time. People forgive me. It's like they kind of they eat. They're like a little aggravated that it was wrong, but then they're like, hey, thanks, that was great, you know, or wasn't it? It's like they just forget about it. But if I've taken a reservation, and you're wrong with the reservation, people don't say hi to you in the supermarket. Like they're like. It's just like a level of like personal fury, and so I think like what we've realized through the years is like, you know, so even at Juniper, it's like taking reservations. It usually involves like a complicated a series of apologies, or there's somebody that's so mad and they storm off and like just like marching out the door, and they're just like, and when they drive by, I picture them. It's not like you're invisible to them anymore. They're like, and if they drive by and you're full, they're mad still. Like it's like and I might be wrong in saying that. So like I think with the new place, because it's big, it's a big spot, and there's more flexibility with where we can put people. So I think what'll happen is if I'm working the front and I'm saying hi to people, and then I have some disastrous night where it's like instead of having just like 1 or 2 people like a little aggravated, you have, you know, 17 people that are just like grabbing you by your shirt and just being like, you ruined my wife's birthday. And I've heard all this. Like it's like you're just like, I'm so sorry. Like I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what else to tell you, but like, you know. So we'll just keep doing it until we can't, or maybe we can figure it out a way to make it so it's good. But what I have realized, and I don't want to sound judgmental in saying this, is that like most of the time people aren't in a hurry. They're in a hurry for what they want, but they're not in a hurry for anything. So it's like the amount of time people have allotted, you know, they're with people they love, like, and care about, hopefully, and they've accounted for, you know, the half an hour to get there in parking, and then like 2 hours for dinner, and then an hour for like wrapping things up and goodbye, and then a half an hour go by. And so it's like basically, you know, 4 to 5 hours of the night is accounted for in their brain. So it's like whether they go down the street and have a drink and come back, but they're just mad because they can't do it in the order that they want, but they're still with the same people, with the same weather, and hopefully having the same experience with the same people. It's just like it's not the cadence that they wanted. And you know, it's like, so with me, like, I'd say Sweet Basil has taught me like a lesson where it's like if you're trying to get on a plane for a flight, and unless you're trying to pack the bags, it's like, what's the hurry? Like, the plane's going to leave at the same time, the flight's going to arrive wherever you're going at the same time. So if you're in a hurry to get on the plane, you just want progress more than you, because you're going to be stuck in an uncomfortable seat longer than you would be if you're waiting. You know what I mean? I think there are a bunch of, it's so like I know you guys all need to go on. I'm so sorry, but
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
What do you do when you have a lot of people waiting, and you have people that are sitting and they got the check a half hour ago and they're just talking?
So, I mean, it is what it is. You can't. There have been a couple of instances like there are two things. Usually, what I do is it's like I'm just there to facilitate a good time, and so the people that are waiting for the other people that are enjoying themselves, they're in conflict with each other, and I'm the architect. Like an architect in a building thing, like the builders hate the architect, and then the client's mad because everything's taking too long, so everyone's just kind of like, yeah. But so like I'm the one telling the people waiting that they're, you know, I'm standing in between them and what they want, but then these people are still having a good time. So it's like you're just kind of doing this jujitsu. So I figure I try to feed people while they wait with like complimentary hors d'oeuvres. And at Sweet Basil, we make these like crostini is what we call them, and they're basically like toasted stale bread with stuff on them. But then we made it so you can't actually buy them. You can't purchase it. It has to be while you're waiting. So it's like it's actually like becomes a little bit of a perk. But you know, but I'd say there are two things I've said to people, and one, and I it's like if I'll go up to them and if they've been there for 3 hours and I have somebody that's waited like a really long time for dinner, and you can tell that they're babysitters, everything's just going to get unpleasant for everybody. I'll go over to them and I'll be like, and I've only done this a few times, like less than 5, but I'll be like, there's no right or wrong answer, but it'll be like, how long do you think you guys are going to be here? Because you can hang out as long as you want. I'm going to be here until maybe 1 in the morning, so like you're welcome to hang out as long as you want. But I do have some people that I wouldn't mind giving them a definitive answer so that they could make a judgment call whether they want to eat at a different restaurant or not. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to talk them into staying. I'm just trying to figure, I want to be able to give them the proper information so they can do what they need to do, and I can be like, hey, you know, and then, but on the flip side of it, if they were really unpleasant to me about how long they had to wait, and then they don't care about others, I will be like, at that point, I'm like, you guys are universally inconsiderate. Like you're probably like you only care about yourself, and you probably are like this at movie theaters, and you're probably like this at the car wash. Every aspect of your life, you're probably like this with your own relatives. Like you are just oblivious to other people and their opinions, and you like may or may not have ruined my night already by like being cruel to me or my staff earlier, and then now you actually don't care. And so if somebody's ever like really upset with me, like vocally in front of a crowd of people, And then they end up staying until the whole place closed down. But I'll just be like, oh, I'm so glad you guys weren't in a hurry after all and could enjoy yourselves. Like, I'll say that. Like, it's like, you know, and they'll usually be like, what's that supposed to mean? It's like, well, you seem like you're really like, you just had places to be, like a plane to catch. And here you are at like, you know, 12:30 and I'm still waiting for you to leave. So it's like, you know.
You get to do the wrap
All
up.
right. I'm going to put it in a book too.
Question?
Sure.
How do you decide which restaurant you're going to be at on a given night?
One more thing, don't pick it.
Yeah. So wait, so I was going to tie this together because I apply this to my staff, but then I've also realized that it applies to me. I've spent a lot of time in Home Depot lately. Like just, you know, when you're opening a restaurant, there's like, you know, just light bulbs and Phillips head screwdrivers that you can't find and measuring tape. And it's just all of it, painter's tape. It's like, so it's just, you just need to know where all the Home Depots are in the area.
Everybody last call? All right, David, you ready?
One more. Ashley, one more.
But so like my staff, there are a few people that work for me that will,
Yeah.
ah.
Alyssa did not have hers.
So there are people that work for me that will drive around in circles trying to find the closest parking space. But the thing is, if you ever watch like how you work, it's like you're on your feet for 5 to 6 hours, and you zigzag back and forth. And I think with like an odometer, I've walked about 6 miles over the course of a shift. And so like at that point, I could actually park in the Wellesley Public Library parking lot.
The library.
That's what I said, right? Yeah. But then, and walk to Juniper, but for some reason doing it would be like, oh. But so like at the supermarket and at Home Depot, it's like everybody seems to circle around looking for the right spot. But once you're in the store, you walk like 1.5 miles getting all your stuff. And then I'll even be at the cart and I'll look all the way the entire length of the store for a shorter line. And then I'll walk the whole length of the store, you know, and then to get just a shorter line. So it's all these little transactions that take place in your brain that are based in like immediate gratification, but they don't really matter, you know, they kind of do. But
So how long were you going to go?
oh,
On a given morning?
so like
What's the amount of time?
so lately it's been bologna, but then I realized I think that it's like, you know, I'd say for the most part, like if I seem like I'm like even keeled and like lighthearted, I am most of the time, but I have this list in my pocket of all the things that need to get corrected all the time. And I write them down, and it's like this dog-eared piece of paper, and I'll cross them off as I go. And if I have it in my, I'll answer the question, I promise. I'll make it quick too, so you guys can go. But so the when I'm you know, like, I forgot where I was going. So like if I put it in my phone, it's gone forever. But if it's in a piece of paper, it haunts me and it's there and I have to deal with it. But so like I've realized I'm spending most of my time at Bologna because it's the newest place. But then I'm also realizing I'm kind of, from a managerial standpoint, doing more harm than good because I'm like, you know, micromanaging things that will probably come out, you know, they're going to wrinkle themselves out. Like where if I'm like, you know, maybe even creating more problems than not. And so what I have been doing is taking like a day or two per week and going to Sweet Basil and going to Juniper and having the manager from there go over there so they can like kind of impart their own culture. And so like it's a different set of eyes, and they might actually respond better to each other than they do to me. So if I'm there just like, we have too much Sam Cooke on the playlist. You know, that was a quote. I was like, realize we have a lot of Sam Cooke.
But it's really nice that you can have a conversation in your restaurants. There are so many restaurants these days, when you walk out the door and you feel like you've just screamed for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to be able to go to your restaurants where you can talk to the people that you're there with and actually have a conversation.
That's good to know because we had to put soundproofing into Juniper, and that was like a big deal. It was a big investment too, and it was like, but it was important. Like, so if you look in the back room, it used to be like tin ceiling, and it was cool. But it was like I would like, drive home myself, and I was like, and I bought a DVD on the AARP website called I See What You Say, because I know I'm going to be deaf. Like, I wanted to learn how to read lips before I actually go deaf.
Thought where that was going.
Yeah. And so but yeah, Sweet Basil, the same. It's like the ceilings are high. So if you're in the small room off to the right, it's the ceilings are lower and it's a little more deafening. Like, deafening is probably an exaggeration, but with the new restaurant, I'm in the process of I had to get a building permit, and then I had to get architectural drawings, and it wasn't as simple as just putting it up on the walls. But I wanted the artwork on the walls first, and the artwork is cool. There's a woman named Karen Moss, and she was having dinner at Sweet Basil and talking about art and whatever, and I just kind of was like, and then just like chimed in, and then she's like, well, I'm an artist too, and I was like, let me see some of your stuff. And so so she's probably in her mid 60s, and her son is a death metal drummer, which is cool. It's like, I love that. It's and for the band Guar, and it's mostly like science fiction theatrics. Like, they get dressed up in costume and they spit blood on each other or whatever. It's like, but so she and her husband have become like aficionados of death metal, and they're like, and he's just like, the more you listen to it, the more you actually get to appreciate the intricacies. I'm like, how to stand in solidarity with your child? Like, all right. Sorry. Where were we?
These are how our own conversations go.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, keep going until the battery runs out. All right. 970-769.
970-769.
That's you? Yeah.
David, thank you so much. Thank you to the library. Thank you to Ashley.
You know what
That's the amazing programming.
I want to do 2 more. This one's that was for the gift card?
Yeah.
All right. That.
Love your grandfather's art, by the way.
It's cool. All right, I got one more. 970-734.
Yeah.
Say it again.
970-734.
Oh, wait, no, you have the gift certificate. Wait, who has the book? All right, do another one. I have no idea why.
All right. 970-763. That's you? All right. All right. I'm going to give you I guess so, yeah.
I'll give you that. I think it's...
Okay, it's over here.
Thank you, everybody. On to the next one.
Hey, do you have a cookbook yet?
What?
Do you have a cookbook yet?
I don't. Nancy, we got a cookbook?
Do you have the other one?